Hi, my name's Justin Shelf, and I'm the founder here at PatchMyPC. In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up our publisher that can be used to publish third-party updates, as well as create third-party applications for base installations within Configuration Manager. The first thing that you want to do is, if you haven't already purchased and have a license, you can go to our website and click Request Trial. You just submit a form here, and then we're going to send you a link that includes a 30-day full access trial with all products. Once you have your license available, you can go ahead and download our installer. Now, you do have the ability to download and start setting up even before you get your license, and we'll explain what that looks like. Now, once you've downloaded the MSI, you can go ahead and just launch that. It's a pretty typical installation. You only get one prompt that you really have to choose something for. Now, this prompt is going to be related to Intune standalone mode. Now, if you do not plan on using Configuration Manager features like third-party updates or applications, and you just want to use the service with Intune, you can check this box and it will disable some of the Config Manager and WSUS prerequisite checks. Now, in our case, we're not going to do that, and that would be a separate installation guide if you want to use Intune standalone mode. Once the installation is done, you can go ahead and launch the service. Now, the first thing that we want to configure in the General tab is our license. Now, if you do not have a 30-day full access trial or you've purchased and have a subscription, you do have the ability to do a public trial mode. Now, if you enable the public trial mode, it's going to limit you to a small subset of products that you can use for evaluation only. Now, if you do not have a license yet, but you've installed the service, you can always start with the trial mode option. And then later on, if you get a full access 30-day subscription or become a customer, you can simply paste in your subscription license and click validate. That will automatically convert any applications that you enabled in the smaller public mode, and they'll still be enabled, but you can then enable all products and all features. Now, the next thing, once you've either enabled trial mode or you've configured a license for your subscription, you can then choose your certificate. Now, if you want to publish third-party updates to WSUS and have them sync to Configuration Manager, you do have to have a signing certificate that's used for WSUS. So this is essentially just a code signing cert that you can either import from a PKI, so if you're using Active Directory Certificate Services, or even if you have a code signing cert from a public certificate authority like DigiCert, you can simply come into our tool and choose import. At that point, you would simply browse out to the PFX certificate that you've exported for code signing, and then you would enter your password in. Now, if you want to use a self-signed certificate, which is generally going to be a little bit easier of a method, you have the ability to generate a self-signed certificate within our tool here. Now, I'm going to choose this method, and this does allow a bit more flexibility if you generate the self-signed certificate in our tool versus letting SCCM automatically generate it for you. Now, there is the option where if you want to have SCCM automatically create the cert, within your software update point, you have the ability to go in there and look at your sites and then right click and go to your software update point. Now, if you enable the option within here under third-party updates, you can choose to let Configuration Manager manage the cert. Now, what will happen in this instance is if you do not have a code signing certificate already, SCCM will generate a self-signed one, just like our tool, which could be used for third-party updates. Now, the only difference here is if you let SCCM manage it, you get a little bit less flexibility with creating the cert. So for example, we could give this a custom certificate name if we wanted to for the common name. So we could say PatchMyPC WSUS cert. We also allow you to adjust how long it's valid. So the default is 5 years. That's also the same if you let SCCM generate it. But if you use our tool, we can generate that and make it longer or shorter, as well as adjust the key length. So I'm going to go ahead and click Generate Certificate. Now, once this is generated, we can go back into Configuration Manager, and then we can enable certificate management. So what that will actually do, if we enable that and choose OK, the next thing that we can do is run a software update point synchronization, and that's going to automatically detect that we've created a new certificate. So from our tool, we have the ability to open the WSync Manager within SCCM, and we'll see within that software update point sync, it's going to detect that it sees a new certificate that was generated from our tool, and then it's automatically going to add that into SCCM so that it can automatically be deployed to clients. So for example, we can see within that log file that it detected the new cert, and then it automatically is managing it now. So what that means is if we come back into our console, we should see that certificate that we generated directly from our tool. Now, in the event that you enable this option in Configuration Manager and synchronize your software update point, you would have to close and reopen our tool before we detect the certificate that Configuration Manager generated in the event that you did not want to generate it through our tool and you wanted to use the default certificate option that Configuration Manager can create. Now, the only other setting that if you use the Config Manager option to manage it that you want to enable is within your client settings, you want to go to Software Updates, and you want to make sure that you choose the option to enable third-party software updates on clients. This would not be enabled by default, so you would want to set that to yes. And what that's going to do is it's going to have your clients automatically install the certificate that SCCM is now detecting and also set a local group policy that tells your clients they can trust any third-party updates that have been published. Now, one thing that could occur is if your software update point is remote from your site server, so for example, your site server, let's say it's site 01, and then you have another remote site system called sup 01. Now, if you have that remote scenario, you do have to be aware that in order for SCCM to manage the certificate, it would only work if that remote software update point is running in SSL. So here's the documentation that we'll include here. So if you want to enable the certificate management and your software update point is remote, it would have to be running in HTTPS mode. Now, some customers may not want to go through the complexity of having SCCM configured for SSL for software update points. And in that case, we could simply go through the same option that we just did, where we generated the certificate from our tool. But the only difference is we would need to use a GPO in order to deploy the cert in the group policy to allow third-party updates. So in that event, you can go to our documentation page and we have a PDF that you can use if you want a step-by-step guide for that. But just to show you what that looks like, let's just go ahead and go through that process. Now, in the event that you did configure Config Manager to manage it and the certificate is successfully showing up within your console, there's no need to manually deploy the cert using group policy. The Configuration Manager client could do that for you. So what I'm going to do is just in the event that you were unable to perform that automation, what you could do is create a group policy. So you could either create an existing one, link to an existing, or you could create a new GPO. In this example, I'll just create a new one and call it WSUS cert. In order to deploy that certificate, we want to go under Policies, Windows Settings, Security Settings, Public Key Policies, and we want to import that into the Trusted Root and the Trusted Publishers. So if I right-click on Trusted Publishers, I'm going to browse out to the desktop where I copied that exported certificate, and then we'll choose Yes to import that. Now you would also need to do that for the Trusted Root as well. So we can go under the Trusted Root Certification Authorities and choose Import and choose that same exported certificate. There we go. And the only other setting that you would want to enable if you do have to use GPOs to configure these prereqs is under Administrative Templates, Windows Components, Windows Update. You would want to enable the policy that says Allow Signed Updates from Intranet Update Service Location. Choose Enabled, and then as long as your clients are in a GPO that this applies to, all the prerequisites would be good in the event that you're not letting SCCM manage the cert and deploy it for you. So that covers both scenarios where you could either let SCCM deploy the cert or use a GPO depending on whether or not you meet the requirements for letting SCCM manage it. The only time that you would not is if that software update point is remote and it's not in SSL mode. The next thing that you want to do is go over to the Updates tab. So this is going to be which products you want to enable for third-party software update publishing within Configuration Manager. Now, we do have a pretty nifty feature where we can come in and we can enter in your Config Manager SQL database server as well as the database name, and you can click on Query. What that will do is if you're not sure out of the 300 and some applications that we support, which ones you want to publish as an update, you can scan against hardware inventory within Config Manager and then enable products based on whether they're detected or not. You can even have these scans happen at every synchronization. So for example, if we added a product in the future and you wanted to auto-enable those products based on them being installed on a specific number of devices, you can have that happen automatically, and you can even enable these new products with customizations like disabling updates, for example. For this example, let's just say you wanted to select everything that detected and enable that. Within a few clicks on that database scan, you could have all your products enabled for publishing. Now for this example, just to save time, we're only going to enable Google Chrome. So for example, we can come in here and enable Chrome. So you can individually select products, and you can also right-click on products for customizations. So you can right-click on products at the product level, at the vendor level, and even at the all products level to enable custom right-click options that can apply within your updates and applications. So for example, if you want to say, I want to automatically close any conflicting processes when there's an update for that app, you have the ability to do that, for example. In this case, we'll leave that default, but let's say that we want to do something like delete shortcuts if an application creates shortcuts, or let's turn off the self-update feature. And then one of my favorites would be you can enable logging options. So let's say that you want to automatically add the log for the vendor's installation logs. By default, we save that in CCM logs and then create a subfolder. You can automatically enable logging for products. So since we enable that at the all products level, if we come down to Google Chrome, we can see that we have all those customizations applied. Now, once we're at the product level, you can even do other customizations, like if you had to make an environment-specific change, you can even add custom pre or post scripts to perform any customizations for products as needed. For this example, we'll leave everything else default. Now, for the application piece, we can just go to Config Manager Apps, and then we can enable these applications for publishing. Now, you will have to enable a few options here, for example. The first thing for applications, you need to tell us where your SCCM provider is. So in this case, my SMS provider is on a server called Demo1, and then we can test that connection. The next thing, you need to give us a UNC path where you're going to download application content where we create our applications. So we're going to use a sources folder. Now by default, we will automatically create a subfolder in the path that you defined called applications. So we can see this is currently empty. So we'll leave that at the sources path here. There's a few options that you can configure depending on your needs. One of the more common ones is that we can automatically move any applications that we create to a custom folder within your SCCM console. So for example, we can see all these folders within SCCM, and let's say that we want all our apps to go into the Patch My PC folder by default. The next option is, how do you want to handle updates to applications when they come out? So by default, if you leave the option to update applications in place, whenever there's a new update for an app, it will update the existing application in place. So for example, if you originally set this up and you published Google Chrome 79 and then version 80 came out, it would update the previous app in place so that you're always deploying the latest one within your task sequences and collection deployments. Now, if you had to have more change control or you wanted versioning for multiple applications where you could revert back, you could choose the option to create a new application each time there's a new update available. And you can also even add distribution point groups where any applications can automatically be distributed within your environment. Outside of that, we can go ahead and click OK. Now, let's say that you enabled a lot of products within the previous step for update publishing. You do have the ability to duplicate any of those products for applications as well. So for example, if we wanted to enable that Chrome product with all the same customizations that we applied for the update version of that, we can choose to enable products based on the updates here. So just click the duplicate icon, and then you can optionally even copy any right-click customizations that was applied to that product as a software update. So we can see here that that automatically enabled that same product for application creation along with all the customizations that we applied. Now for applications, you will see that there are a few additional options for the right-click customizations. Now let's say that we want to enable 7-zip as well as an application. And within here, you can even move an application to a separate folder. For example, if you wanted like a separate subfolder for specific apps, you can be more granular on the application level if needed. That's all the customizations that will apply for now. Since this is not Intune specific for this video, we're going to skip over that and then choose our sync schedule. So the sync schedule is going to be how often you want to synchronize our third-party update catalog. This is similar to your software update point sync schedule in the fact that this is how often that our service is going to publish third-party updates from our catalog. So for example, by default, it's every night at 7 p.m. We usually do about 4 to 5 catalog updates per week, just because third-party updates do not really apply on a monthly cadence like Microsoft updates may. Now, we do have this helpful option where if you want, you can automatically trigger a software update point synchronization within Configuration Manager whenever we publish any new third-party updates to your environment. So if you wanted these updates to show up right away in your console of SCCM, you could choose that option to trigger a software update point sync. Before running our first synchronization, we do have some alerting options. So you can enable SMTP email notifications if you want to. We already had this pre-configured to save some time. And you can even configure Microsoft Teams webhooks if you want to post notifications directly to a Teams channel. So here's a demo Teams channel that we've created a webhook for that we want to get notifications whenever anything is published. So once we've configured everything the way we want it for products and notifications, I'm going to go ahead and run our first synchronization manually. What that's going to do is start downloading content and publishing your updates and your applications to Configuration Manager. Now, once this is set up and running, this is going to be an entirely automated process where the syncs will occur and automatically publish anything new from our catalog. So once our service is configured, all your day-to-day work would be done directly within the Configuration Manager console like you're used to. Within the next couple seconds, we should get a Teams notification that the Chrome software update was published. So we'll pause it and wait for that notification to occur. All right, so we just got our first Teams notification. So we can see that Google Chrome was automatically published. So that's where you can get a lot of helpful information either through email notifications or Teams or both to keep up to date with anything new that's happening within your environment with regards to third-party updates or apps. Now within this channel, we can see that this directly goes out to release notes for the products that are being published. It also includes things like CVE IDs that directly go out to the National Vulnerability Database as well to keep you notified about new updates that are becoming available within your environment. Now we can see that we also have our applications that get alerted for us as well within here as well. Now, once these updates are published, you're not going to see them in your console right away. You're going to have to wait for the software update point synchronization to occur. So if you chose the option to perform a software update point sync directly from our sync schedule, that process should get kicked off automatically. You can review that in the wsyncmanager.log on your site server. Now, once that first synchronization is completed, there is one step that you have to take within your software update point, and that's to enable the Patch My PC product within the product list. So once the synchronization is done, you can come back into your software update point products and then enable that product for synchronization. Now, once that has been enabled, you will have to perform one more synchronization before the third-party updates start showing up within your SCCM console under the All Software Update point. So we'll wait for that synchronization to complete, and then we'll come back to our console. Okay, so we can see the synchronization completed, and we can even see that third-party update showing up within the wsyncmanager.log. So if we come over to our All Software Updates, you should now see any of the third-party updates that you enabled for publishing. Now, it might take a little bit of time before you start seeing the scan results from your clients, but once the updates have been synchronized, they're going to function just like any other third-party update or even Microsoft update for that fact. You can simply come in here and you can download them to deployment packages. You can create software update groups to deploy them, and you can even use automatic deployment rules if you wanted to. Now, we don't create any ADRs by default, but if you wanted to create an ADR, you could use the criteria if you wanted to include all products from our solution. You could just do vendor equals patch my PC. Now, if we go over to the applications node of our console, we can also see that the different applications that we enabled are also automatically created. Now, you should have a lot of default properties automatically filled in, things like descriptions, icons, privacy, documentation, keywords, etc. should be ready to go. Now, we do not automatically deploy any of the updates or any of the applications within our service. You would use the Configuration Manager console to choose how you want to target these applications and or software updates within your environment. At this point, everything's configured within our tool, and the deployment would just be done using your typical Configuration Manager admin task within the console. I hope this was helpful, and thank you for watching.